Hello, Kuzu Consult is here again with another sample decentralized application or DApp. This is a contribution from Kuzu Consult to the Algorand ecosystem by Steven Sunday and I. In this presentation, we will learn how to develop a decentralized application in the form of a console app using the C#.NET framework to communicate with the Algorand blockchain to generate account address, check if the account address is valid, and also check the account balance of that address. Let's get started. Alright, so right here I have my Visual Studio 2019 open. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. Right, like I earlier said, we're going to create a console application. So this is a console app we're going to create using the .NET Core framework with the C# language. So go ahead and click on that and click on the next button. So I'm going to call this console app DApp, decentralized application. Okay, so our project is being created. This should take a little while. Alright, so our project just created. The first thing we're going to want to do is to install our Algorand package into our application. So let's go into our Solution Explorer and do just that. Okay, so right where the DApp project library is, I'm going to go ahead and right click on it. Click on it and right click. Head over to manage NuGet packages. Okay, let's go ahead and browse for Algorand. Okay, so this is it right here, Algorand SDK for the .NET framework to interact with the Algorand network. So go ahead and install it. I'll click on OK and accept. So we have it being installed right here. Alright, so our Algorand package has been installed successfully. You can see the green icon arrowed down, which signifies that it has been installed, and then you can see it also right here. We have the installed version 0.2.0. So let's head back to our program, and then the first thing we're going to want to do is create an account or an account address. Okay, so by doing that, let's go ahead and make an instance of an account. Include the using statement, that's using Algorand. Alright, so having done that, let's go ahead and print out what our account address would be. Alright, so to proceed, let's go ahead and print out console.writeLine and so we can just do this single line of code to print out what our account address would be. Let's go ahead and test that. Okay, so we have our account address over here. This has been generated for us. So let's go ahead and we have done the first task, which is creating an account address. The next task will be to ensure that the address is valid. So I'm going to copy this account address. I'm going to go ahead and close this window. Okay, so back to this, I'm going to create a variable called a, and then passing the account address into the variable. So having done this, I'm going to go ahead and do the next task, which is to check if our account address is valid or not. So I'm going to make an if else statement. If address not is valid, so we're supposed to pass in an account address into this bracket over here. This is a built-in method or a built-in function carrying a parameter. So if I hover over it, you can see it over here. Is valid is going to carry an encoded address. Okay, so let's go ahead and pass in now a variable into it. So if the address, if the a address is valid, then print out address is valid, else Alright, so if our address is valid, okay, so we have a typo over here, else, like this. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this line of code. Okay, so if our address is valid, it's going to print out our address is valid for us. If it's not valid, it's going to print out address is not valid. So let's go ahead and test that also. Alright, so we have our address is valid over here. Alright, so let's go ahead and test if it's not valid. So we're going to tamper with the account address over here. Let me go ahead and add 1 in number to it and then run it again to see what our result would be. So we have address is not valid, which means the built-in function that confirms if the address is valid or not is actually working. So let's go ahead and remove this, and then the next thing we're going to do now, we're done with the task 2, is to check the account balance. Alright, so to do that, we're going to actually need an API. We have to use an API, which is the Algorand API. We're going to make an instance of the Algorand API, passing in the parameters. So I have that already in a notepad. I'm going to go ahead and copy it and then paste it right here. So you can get this Algorand API from their documentation, from the Algorand documentation on their website. So we have Algorand API instance. So with this API instance, we can actually have access to every single thing that our Algorand API consists of. So if you hover over this over here, so we can see our string base path, our API token also included. So this is the base path, and then we have our token right here. So that is basically all we need to be able to run and test this this sample over here. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is to create a variable which will be used together with our Algorand API instance that can be used to check if our account address, if our account actually has any amount of micro algos inside or not. So to do that, let's create a variable. I'm going to call this account info equals to Algorand API instance dot account information. So this is a built-in function we need to actually run this. So what do we need now? Let's go ahead and So our account information is supposed to, we can see it right here, it's supposed to pass in a string of our address, of what our address is. So and our address is A over here. Our A is actually containing our address. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do A that's to string. Okay, so our error has gone because we have passed in the necessary item needed. So the next thing we're going to do is to print out what our account details would be. So I'm going to go ahead and do this console.writeLine, and then I'm going to say account balance of account info, or rather I'm going to do account balance of, then passing the address parameter dot A is, and I'm going to do this account info dot amount, just like this. All right, so let's go ahead and debug, test it. So address is valid. Right, this might take a little bit of time because it's actually fetching it from the internet, because it is stored on the Algorand blockchain itself. So you have to make sure you have access to internet connection to be able to check this out, and also not just internet connection but a good fast internet connection. Alright, so right here we have the account balance. So we have the account balance of this address is 0. We just created the account address, and nothing has been funded into the account address, which is why we have the 0 right here. So we have 0 micro algos inside of this account. So let's go ahead and fund this account to see how much we would have after funding. Alright, so go ahead and open your browser, web browser. I'm using the Microsoft Edge, whichever one you're using. You can use Chrome, Firefox. So head over to this link, bank.testnet.algorand.network. Alright, go ahead and navigate to the link. Okay, while it's opening, let's copy what our address is, because we're going to pass in our address to get funded. So I'm going to copy this and then back into our browser. So we're going to pass in our address right here, but before we do that, let's confirm that we are not a robot. So click on the checkbox and then paste your account address right inside of this text field over here, and then click on the dispense button. This is going to dispense micro algos into this account address. So go ahead and do that. So we have a code status 200, which means success. That means we have successfully transferred micro algos into this account address. Now let's go back into our program and then run it again to see how much micro algos we would have. Alright, so we can see account balance of this address is this. So we have about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is almost 100 micro algos, if I'm correct. So this is basically all we need These are all the steps needed for us to create an account address, check if the account address is valid, and also fund the account address. So having done this, let's go ahead and fund it again for the second time to make sure everything is working fine. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing again and then paste what the account address is, hit on the dispense button. Alright, so we have a successful transfer of microalgos to our account. So let's go ahead and test it again. Let's check. So we had 1 with about 8 zeros. Okay, so yes, we have a 2 over here, which means our microalgos was successfully funded or transferred into our account address. Thank you. Kuzu Consult is a blockchain consultancy firm based in Nigeria, and this is a contribution from Kuzu Consult to the Algorand Blockchain ecosystem. If you wish to contact Kuzu Consult, you can do that by visiting or hitting up this email address, kuzukonsult@gmail.com. Thank you.